Hey.
Yo.
News is way too depressing this week. We're just gonna cancel. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Or just do what we always wanted to do, is convert this to a Black culture review show.
Yeah. There's a lot. There's a lot this week for that.
Oh, there is? There's Black culture this week?
It's like
what?
Black culture Armageddon. It's P. Diddy is the new Jeffrey Epstein. Cat Williams is being proven right again.
Oh, he's on Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
I just saw that. That's epic. That's an epic crossover.
Yeah. But remember the line from the Shannon Sharp interview? Like, P. Diddy, I don't want to party with you. I don't want to party with you, P. Diddy.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Wow. So there's a lot of that going on, a lot of accusations of homosexuality.
Mm-hmm. It's
no, isn't
Freak
that
Mill is trending on Twitter? Freak Mill.
Wait, what are they saying about Diddy? That he was gay, or that he was a predator?
Both.
Or both. Okay.
Both.
A gay predator.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Well, now. Interesting.
Yeah.
But there's very
too many allegations in the court documents from purchasing prostitutes and drugging them, having underage girls at parties commingle with celebrities, using that to
girls and
artists. Yeah.
Girls and boys?
No word on male prostitutes, but definitely female. Yeah.
Oh, you said he was being accused of being gay.
Yeah, but he's being accused of having sex with male artists to leverage their careers.
Oh. Back to Ukraine. Anyway,
okay.
No, I don't know.
Well,
I mean,
this also ties into Israel because P. Diddy was the when Ye went on his anti-Semitic rant, it was because of P. Diddy. It was because P. Diddy texted him. He said, whatever this publicity stunt you're doing with Candace Owens and the White Lives Matter shirts, stop it right now. Let's have a talk.
Right.
Send me your address, man to man. And Kanye West said, shut up. You're a Fed. You work for Jews. That was the first on-record anti-Semitic statement.
That brings us full circle, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It also brings the show full circle, because we talked about that very thing. What was it, 2 years ago or something? Or a year ago? I can't believe we spent weeks discussing Kanye West's anti-Semitism. But yeah. Well, that just, it's just further evidence that the Jews are basically behind everything. But man, it's amazing how, like, Israel just does things that look exactly like the stereotypes. I mean, the mind control of certain people, the way certain people think about Israel. And you can see it. It's like, again, friends of mine who are like journalists and in the media do this, some of them. And I know the lineage and I know the history of, like, terms and ideas and concepts and arguments that all come straight from Israeli government sources, basically. And I see them very casually say them as if they're just objective fact. And they don't know, most importantly, they don't know that they come from what's called Hasbara, the Israeli propaganda. And so, that's maybe the oldest anti-Semitic trope, is of the global mind controlling Jew, the puppeteer. And there's lots and lots of art, propaganda art over the centuries of some Jewish sort of evil wizard literally holding strings attached to everyone on earth.
Like P. Diddy.
Yeah, well, I mean, for God's sake, okay, I mean, the relationship between Jews and Black culture in terms of that structural economic relationship, behind every successful rapper is a Jew. I mean, almost every single one of them had at least one Jewish manager or agent. Huge, very important story, very interesting story, but gosh, it is amazing how, like, that's sort of what is one of the good things about the issue of Israel, is that it branches out and touches so many other issues, even this. I mean, what goes on in the streets of Brooklyn is actually directly related to what is going on right now, like in Gaza. So because of this, the long history of very complex relationship between Jews and blacks in this country that goes back about a century. And in fact, I used to work with kind of the leading, I guess he's the leading scholar of this very issue, Jack Salzman. He's written many books on the history of relations between blacks and Jews, but very fraught, but also very commingling. Michael Rappaport's kind of a decent example of that. I think
who played the role of Michael Dunwitty, or this Dumb Whitey in Spike Lee's Bamboozled.
Most famously.
Wasn't acting at all in that role.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask, have you seen the Israeli TikToks of these Israelis saying, "Dear Black people who support Palestine and the Arab world, maybe you should reconsider that. Us Jews fought for your civil rights, and the Arabs started the slave trade. So you're welcome."
Well, you know what Rappaport said in a video about that very thing a couple months ago, but he put all over Twitter. He said, "Yeah, we hear y'all. We hear y'all. Don't be coming asking for us for this, that, and the third next time. Don't be coming asking us for no money no more." Because he's, I mean, like, oh, you're saying that you funded the black people, but now the black people are getting uppity and rebelling against your little political hobby horse. And so you're going to stop funding them. So you're just, I mean, like, can you, in service of the state of Israel that's murdering thousands of brown people as we speak. So you're just like Michael Rappaport, but then again, he grew up in the city, and that's why he talked like that, not because he grew up in the city, but because he chose to. But when you live in New York, it's very, no matter what, no matter how rich you are or what you are, you're going to be around that dialect. So you can pick it up pretty easily. And that's what he chose to do. And I know the Beastie Boys, we're all the same generation. I know a bunch of dudes from that generation, Gen X, 1980s, Jewish guys. MC Search, great Jewish rapper, but who also was completely black identified. There's many. It's a long tradition. It goes back to minstrelsy and vaudeville, blackface, 1910s, 1920s. Al Jolson, jazz singer, blackface. Very interesting. And now many Jews are fighting with the blacks again over this Israel thing. So it's wild how popular culture, lowbrow popular culture, what goes on literally in the streets in American cities is related to, as I said, children losing limbs right now in Gaza. When you live inside the preeminent global superpower, every issue basically is connected to foreign policy in some way or another, because this is the hub. This is the hub of the world. You know, we have tentacles. The United States, in multiple ways, has tentacles in every country, pretty much. I mean, there might be a couple islands. There's that one island in the Indian Ocean where they haven't, no person has been allowed to land ashore on for 2 centuries without being murdered. And there's a tribe that lives there. I think it's the Andaman Islands or island. There's like 200 people who've lived down there without any contact with the outside world. That's about it. The US isn't there. The CIA does not have a base there. Yeah, there's no television there. There's no internet there. There's no satellite dishes there, which means that is the only place on planet Earth, I believe, that is entirely out of the sphere of American influence. So if you live in this country, every political issue, pretty much you can connect to global affairs, to geopolitics, to the world outside our borders, to foreign policy, to what is happening to real people that we don't even know about or see halfway across the world. It's quite amazing, and it's unprecedented. This has never been the case. There have been global empires before, but never this large, far-reaching, and never in a time when we had access to all this information. So we can see the empire all the time. We're now looking at it all the time on the internet. we don't even know we're looking at it half the time, but we're looking at it. And now it's like right in our face and it's at its ugliest. But so let's talk about, actually, I'm gonna mess you up. Because before we started, I said I wanted to do a particular order of the stories we're going to cover, but I actually changed my mind, if you don't mind. Let's do Aaron Bushnell now, just because I started talking about that.
I think there's the most to talk about there.
Yes. Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot since Sunday, I guess it was, and when it happened. And it's an incredible thing to think about, because it branches off in so many ways. There's so many different ways to think about it, just intellectually. If you can distance yourself from maybe the most horrific thing and heart-wrenching thing I've seen, but then again, I've been looking at Gaza too I don't know, man. It's just like, holy shit. I'm sick of crying about politics, you know? Politics doesn't deserve it, people. But it's forcing me to cry, and I know it doesn't deserve it anyway. So Aaron Bushnell, right? He douses himself in gasoline. He's an active U.S. airman, active member of the U.S. Air Force right now, or when this happened, which makes it very, very significant too. Douses himself in gasoline in front of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C., sets himself afire. This is after he's walking to the embassy, and he has a camera on himself, and he's giving a speech basically about this is an extreme act of protest against genocide. I mean, he gives a speech, just dissent against Israel and the oppression of the Palestinians, and he shouts, free Palestine, as he sets himself on fire, and even continues to shout as he's sort of shouting free Palestine as his body starts to literally melt. Thank God I haven't watched the unedited version, but you can kind of tell it's literally melting. And then some security guard, I guess, runs up with a fire extinguisher and tries to put him out. And another guy who's U.S. Secret Service, turns out, runs up with a pistol and holds it on him. And the symbolism of all that is quite redolent, you know? But what I want to know, like, what'd you think about it?
I've desensitized to images of violence. I don't know if it's like a defense mechanism or if it's a result of living in a media saturated modern world. But so it wasn't like emotionally, like it wasn't too emotionally gripped. I mean, it was kind of, but I really have an aversion to suicide.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's talk about this, because
I think it's unequivocally morally wrong in all instances.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's a good thing I stopped when I did and asked you your thoughts, because you might guess where I was going.
Yeah, I think everybody who does it commits an act of violence against themselves and hurts their loved ones. Like, you never know how much you mean to somebody else in the world. You never know how much you have to offer the world. And to normalize that, or to, I don't like putting him out there as a hero. I do understand his actions in the broader context of this as a practice that has happened before, most notably the monks, the Tibetan monks protesting the Vietnam War that had those iconic photographs. So I understand it in its broader context, and I don't want to dismiss him as crazy, but I don't want to valorize him as a hero, but I also want to like acknowledge what he did. And why he did it, and, you know, understand it, not excuse it, but understand it.
Yeah. I'm really glad I stopped and asked you. Yeah. Cause I was about to go on a little speech there, making full arguments, at least as full as I could make them in the moment. Like, against precisely what you just said.
Mhm.
Well, not totally.
The
We
arguments
completely.
I've seen dismissing him have been dismissing him because of his mental health and
No, man,
trying
but
to, yeah,
but I respect the shit out of it, so I want to do
yeah,
that. Like,
uh-huh,
so first of all, we do agree on the craziness piece, which,
yeah,
in a sense, is actually what I care about the most. When that was deployed against him, to be expectedly, that's what pissed me off the most, and I wanted to attack that. First, the rest of it was really just an intellectual exercise, actually, and just ways to think about this. I didn't have too firm a position, except that he's not crazy, or I want to say that labeling political dissidents as crazy, as insane, has been a tactic, as Foucault has shown us. Madness and Civilization, everyone, read it, great book, for several centuries now. It's been a tactic by governments in the West, in particular, to label, dismiss political dissidents, and also to label dissident thinking, dissident thoughts as crazy. So we're there. I think we agree on that, right? That it's
to pathologize actions and thought pattern and speech as crazy is.
I don't like, and Rogan and I actually argued about this on his show. I think it was the second time I was on, maybe, or, I don't know. No, yeah. And this is what I hate. This is to me like the greatest evidence that Sam Harris is intellectually vacuous, is that he uses that all the time. I challenge anybody to go listen to any 5 minutes of Sam Harris talking, and you will hear him use a synonym for crazy or insane 10 times. 10 times. I mean, that's his argument for why or how Islam is bad. It's insane. It's delusional. Rogan called trans people crazy, and I objected because I don't want anyone to ever do that to me, to dismiss my ideas or my behavior or who I am, my identity, as crazy. It's dismissive. It's anti-intellectual. It's uncurious. You don't have to agree with someone, but don't dismiss their ideas as the product of something that takes them outside the realm of reasonable discourse. That is actual marginalization of speech, of ideas, of thought. It's incurious. It's anti-intellectual. It's authoritarian too, for that reason. It precludes radical ideas, because every radical political idea, guess what, has been called what initially? Every single one, including things like the abolition of slavery. Guess what that was called in 1830? It's called insane. Of course. So killing yourself. So let me just finish this, and then we'll talk about suicide and whether it's bad or good. So during the Vietnam War, 5 people self-immolated in protest of the U.S. government's campaign in Vietnam. 2 of them in 1965, the year I was born. I think one was out in front of the Pentagon. Robert McNamara, the Secretary of Defense, actually saw it happen. Now, it didn't obviously make him change his mind, because he continued to prosecute the war after that, but he said many years later that he never stopped thinking about that, and that it haunted him, and that when he did change his mind about the war later, too late, he did say that was one of the determining factors. Not that just one guy who was a Quaker, a very white bread, middle America kind of guy, just like Aaron Bushnell, named Norman Morrison. That's what I think so haunting to McNamara. Wasn't some crazy brown Vietnamese looking possible communist who did it. I mean, look at Aaron Bushnell and he was brought up, he was raised, I just found out, in sort of a Christian commune on Cape Cod
Hmm.
called the Community of Jesus, I think it is. And I haven't looked into this, but clearly comes from, and not at all surprising to me. And this is actually a good segue into what you were saying, because I was thinking, was this not an act of pure Christian selflessness?
That's what Chris Hedges argued today.
Did
in
he?
in his Substack.
Right. So
Yeah.
before we go on, I just want to make one thing clear to people. If you know me and my politics, you know that what Bushnell did, even though I'm obviously on his side on the particular issue, I'm going to defend what he did in a certain way, but it is the opposite of my politics. My whole politics is a critique of, a rejection of Christian morality, basically, and its secular forms. Like Chris Hedges is a great example of Christian morality presented in secular form. And in fact, Chris Hedges is deeply Christian, was raised, I think he is a minister, his father was one, or something like that. So this, of course, what Bushnell did, it is in some way the purest act of selflessness. If you assume, and I think this is correct, that it did something to advance the cause. I think it absolutely did, by the way. This is part of my defense of it, is that it for sure accelerated an already hot international protest movement. And it was felt. I mean, I think this shook people, because the fact that he was an airman wearing the uniform while he's in flames, and it shows the depth of the feeling about it, about this issue, for so many of us. It did. And I think it will actually have a very significant material, believe it or not, positive effect. I think it will bring the ceasefire that much closer. I really do. And it will sort of just deepen the international sort of what's called the Palestine solidarity movement. And he's already a hero across the Middle East. There's posters of Aaron Bushnell all across the Middle East.
Well, researching the story, all the news covering it are international, usually Middle Eastern outlets that are digging into the details of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's another thing, well, he was crazy because it's irrational to kill he's killing himself for the people who he's never even met halfway across the world. No, it's very rational from that perspective. He did, I think, absolutely advance it. I mean, the symbol of the monk burning in Vietnam, that became maybe the most iconic image of the war. That's an image everyone has seen and everyone knows what it's about. That is the image that tells everyone that war was evil. That image became a stock image. That became how you explain the Vietnam War. This is what it drove people to do. And everyone now looks at it and says, not he's crazy, that monk who burned himself to death in Vietnam, but like, God, that's how bad it was. The Vietnam War is that bad that people were willing to burn themselves to death to stop it. I think we're going to get there. I think he will become a symbol. I think he might become the symbol in some ways of this war. So I don't know what his family situation is. I don't even know what family he has. I don't know if he had a relationship. I don't know if he had friends. I don't know how many friends. I'm sure he did. But I'm sure let's assume there were people that cared a lot about him. I'm assuming his parents are still alive because he was only 25 years old. So he committed the purest act of selflessness, but for a particular people, not for the people he actually knows. And that is also, to me, the essence of Christian morality, actually. The universalism of it, which then became the morality of, guess what? The left, the political left. They're always talking about everybody else around the world. They know they're going to save everybody else around the world. They'll tell you all about all these little people who live in other countries and what the United States is doing to them and how they're going to raise up and have a revolution. And they care something, or they're just going to go save them, like Samantha Power, like all the people in the State Department. Selflessness, serving others, being an evangelical, giving yourself over, giving over literally your body, which is what Paul calls for in Epistle to the Romans in the Bible. Give yourself over, give your body, sacrifice your body for God's cause. That's what Aaron Bushnell did. So, Michael Weimer, who's more Christian, Aaron Bushnell, or someone who doesn't kill themselves for a just cause?
I didn't want to take it too religious because I don't like speaking authoritatively about religion or being preachy necessarily, but the Catholic Church has I'm pretty sure has a pretty stringent dogma against suicide.
Yeah, because they're actually pro-life.
Yeah.
And I actually mean that. They're, generally, I know there's all sorts of schisms and stuff, but yes, of course. Anti-death penalty, usually, well...
anti-assisted suicide.
Yeah, I mean, the war. Yeah. I was thinking about the war. I mean, they're mixed on war, but there's a strong anti-war Catholic streak for sure, though.
Yeah, that's
for sure. Yeah, big Catholic pacifist thing. Yep. Yeah, and so it's all consistent, and it's all also consistent with the anti-abortion piece. No, they're pro-life now. But why on earth, dude, do you want to stop people from killing themselves? If they themselves think they need to, which shouldn't we assume that that's what they believe?
It's more just like a dispassionate assessment that this is the wrong thing to do.
Force them to stick around. When they want to kill themselves, then when things are so bad that they want to... No, I mean, I think I'm actually more on your side.
Yeah.
I mean, I am. I clearly, like, now, but then again, I was thinking through this because Max Blumenthal said, "Oh, I would have physically tried to have stopped him if I had seen it happening." Max was sort of sympathetic with the politics of it, of course. But I was thinking, I thought about that long and hard. I probably would, just as a reflex, just that's sort of how I am. I'm sort of a protector in that way, like reflexively. But intellectually, I don't think I should
intervene.
Yeah. I don't get it. I mean, intellectually it makes no sense for me to intervene against suicide on any level. I mean, unless it's just some, again, Catholic doctrine, which is consistent within that worldview, so I respect it. But like outside of that logic, that Catholic logic, I don't get it.
It's kind of personal for me because I've just seen how it negatively affects other families, and I get angry at people who commit suicide in the same way that, like, I would get angry at somebody who killed somebody I love. I see it. I see it as like the ultimate selfish act of seeing your problems as so special and so uniquely overbearing that you take the easy way out. Now, this person, Aaron Bushnell, did his suicide as a symbolic gesture for other people on this behalf of other people.
Right.
But still, I think it's actually an egotistical wanting to make your life significant and doing a very harmful way of doing that instead of doing the harder, more taxing and boring duty of being a normal person.
Yep. It's the ultimate expression of leftist, I'm going to say it though, / Christian, universalist, militant selflessness, which is actually, you're right. It's the narcissism of the humanitarian interventionist. It's that Samantha Power narcissism, you know. It's all about you doing good. We never hear about the fucking villagers you saved or gave mosquito nets to or whatever, but we know all about you and the name of your organization and its cool logo. And the badass ads you send out that make us cry, you know, with the starving children in it. Yeah. No, of course it's ego gratification, self-aggrandizement, and whatever, a mollifying of one's guilt about one's class position or whatever. Michael Weimer, see, dude, this is why I talk to you. But I think I'm also right. I mean, from my perspective, I want to hold.
It might be
hold both.
Yeah, it might be objectively. If it might objectively on the end be a politically effective form of protest.
Yeah, I just want to say I want to allow people, even with those politics and even with those tactics, let them do it. Why stop them? Like, he clearly, that's what he wanted to do. Also, you know, we're also fundamentally for like individual liberty, right? He wasn't hurting anybody else, basically. I mean, not physically. So, I mean, there was no act of aggression.
Well,
so I
hate the young people are so impressionable argument, but I don't like valorizing him and the precedent that sets of, oh, this guy, if you call this guy a hero, you're encouraging other people to follow in his footsteps. And I mean, yes, a ceasefire could be reached if 10 more people did this tomorrow in front of the White House or something, but I don't think that's something worth encouraging.
I mean, 5 people did it during Vietnam, as I said. I think it's 5. I heard that. I didn't check that. I know of at least 3 for sure. People maybe could fact check that, but 3, just, yeah.
The chat is saying he was doing it on somebody else's property. So yeah, somebody has to clean that up, dude. You ruined, like, there are real people who have to clean up your charred body off the street. I'm serious. All right.
I can't believe I'm laughing, but this is good. It's good.
I've got a friend who works at a gun range, and once a year, somebody will shoot themselves in the head in the gun range.
Right. I've heard about this.
Yeah. And like, dude, it's the most traumatizing thing ever. And you could just see it on his face the next day that he's just, like, he's going to have to deal with that for the rest of his life. And he just has to pretend that life just goes on normally. Like,
would you call it a Jesus complex? Right?
Yeah.
Seeking martyrdom.
At least
it's sort of similar to like Islamic martyrdom too. Right? Glory in being selfless in that way, and the ultimate selfless act in that way. Yeah. Interesting. They all choose it, both the jihadis who seek that and Aaron Bushnell. Now I'm starting to diss Aaron Bushnell all of a sudden. They both do it in very performative, self-centering ways, right? Very spectacular and performative and self-centering ways when I think of what the jihadis have done and then what he did. Interesting. Very narcissistic. True.
Again, for the chat, we're not comparing him to Christ. It's a Messiah complex. It's not accepting your fate as a normal person and wanting to do something.
It's wanting to be seen as like Christ.
Yeah.
It's a Jesus complex. You're not actually Jesus. You have a complex that tells you that you're Jesus because you want to be regarded as Jesus because he's so highly regarded.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, God damn. Boy. Okay. Well done. Okay. Next. No, I mean, yeah, that's where, I mean, what else was there out of that? to say. But I'm glad we agree on the craziness part. The lack of. We're not going to say that, and always reject. And that goes for anybody. I mean, I don't even call schizophrenics crazy.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I do when I get lazy, sure, but I don't. But I think it's a very bad practice. If you were interested in human freedom, put it that way, individual freedom, you don't want to, and I said this to Joe Rogan, you don't want to go around using that term for people who are weird or different or who you don't agree with, because guess what? Guess who's going to be called crazy next? And people who watch this show, you know, you've probably been called crazy for your beliefs at some point. So you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Also, yeah, like you can be wrong. Like it's okay to be wrong and be completely mentally healthy and harm yourself based off of wrong information or wrong beliefs or wrong assumptions.
Right. I mean,
Yeah, it's
who was crazy? Norman Morrison, who set himself afire, or Robert McNamara, who was leading the Vietnam War? I mean, killing 100, just let's not do that. Let's talk first principles and first values. What do we value? And then how do we get that, rather than calling people crazy?
The other thing from this story is he apparently had inside intelligence that US troops were operating in the tunnels in Gaza.
Oh, no. Well, there's something else that I think this wasn't. I forget who broke this first, and it's actually on Twitter. The document itself. Someone found orders from the Air Force, U.S. Air Force, making it mandatory for U.S. airmen to assist Israel in targeting in Gaza. And so no one knows whether that had anything to do with Bushnell making his decision, but probably did.
Yeah.
In some way or another. Yeah.
I think he was appointed like recently, like he just got his appointment to do bombings in Yemen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'm not 100% certain on that, but I think he got that news and he figured that would be him being complicit in the genocide. So this was
he was also, I mean, very clearly had been for a while a general lefty, a general sort of woke-ish lefty, and I saw his friend from basic training on a show talk about him, and this person was also a woke lefty type, might have been trans, in fact. So, he was very much interested in all the typical woke lefty stuff. Yeah, I mean, one could argue that left-wing politics, certainly contemporary American left-wing politics, the logic of it, the logic within it, ultimately leads you there.
Yes, yeah, that's the logical end of it, is self-immolation. Yeah.
Yep. Because one's identity is paramount, and so the ultimate act of protest is to renounce one's own self and identity. I'm thinking how they would think it through, but yeah, this is where it goes. It's that form of narcissistic selflessness, if that makes any sense, right? It's this, or I should say, a narcissistic performance of selflessness is what it is. The narcissistic performance of selflessness is, I think, what we're talking about here, which is often very destructive toward other people, either literally and directly, as in the case of 9/11, or in the case of Aaron Bushnell's family and friends who loved him, the destruction to them that he did for this performative act of what looks like selflessness actually directly harmed many, many people. Yeah. All right. Let's move on. What else? Oh, let's get on to the fun news. So yeah, they're shooting people running for food. That's cool.
Okay. Yeah.
100 of them this morning. That was awesome. And you can see like overhead footage. The people look like ants. surrounding these aid trucks in northern Gaza. The one sort of basic set of facts I don't quite get is what's going on in northern Gaza, because I thought they had pushed everyone out of northern Gaza, but there clearly are like thousands of people in northern Gaza, because you can see this overhead drone footage of what looked like hundreds and hundreds of people surrounding these trucks trying to get the food off of them. But anyway, we know this was northern Gaza. The aid trucks came in, like one or two or a few of them, and it's 85 out of 500 aid trucks are getting in per day or something like that. People are starving. I mean, I don't know, the numbers are like half a million are essentially starving. Anyway, so there were hundreds of people surrounding these aid trucks. Now, this is all being disputed, so no one knows for sure what happened here except the people who were there. But 104 dead.
Yeah. The IDF has admitted to firing on the crowd.
Yeah, so we know they fired on the crowd multiple times. We don't know exactly how many shots they took. I've heard that they also used the tanks, shot into the crowd, fired shells into the crowd. I mean, that would be something else. But what the friends of Israel are saying is that it was actually the IDF didn't kill anybody. It was a stampede that killed the people.
Yeah.
But it's in a big outdoor space. It makes no sense. And it weren't that many people. It was like a few hundred people. It wasn't thousands and thousands of people crammed into like an auditorium, which is where stampedes like that happen, deadly ones. So I could certainly see some people getting killed from a stampede in that situation, but not 104, I don't think. And also we know that they fired on this crowd. Now, what's going to cause people to stampede also? If it was the stampede that caused it, why were they stampeding? Maybe it's because you were shooting at them. I don't know, man. I mean, it just one of the scariest things about this war, it's not a war. I mean, it's just a slaughter because there's almost no resistance, and they have tanks, and Al-Qassam has rifles and some RPGs. That's it. But is that the IDF soldiers on the ground, from all the evidence I've seen, which by now is quite a lot of videos and testimony and reports and descriptions of their behavior, and also just, my God, their military acumen. I'm not a military guy, but like, and I think in the first 3 or 4 weeks of the war, Hamas fighters like killed a whole bunch of IDF soldiers because they were literally smoking bongs in windows of apartments that they had just occupied, and they were in the window so that they could like exhale the smoke out the window. And a sniper just across the way sees them. And there was just one video after another of IDF guys like hanging out in windows and then getting shot by a sniper. But then all the looting, all the mocking, all the desecration, all the humiliation, all the and they don't seem to be very good fighters at all. Their tactics just suck. They're getting the latest number, by the way, I think it's 500 now, IDF dead. And that's what they're reporting. So it's probably going to be quite a bit more than that. They're getting their tanks blown up by dudes running up to them wearing Adidas tracksuits, placing some kind of explosive literally on top of the tank, and then running away and blowing it up. I mean, it's amazing, actually. And they just seem to feel, it looks like they have a license to kill, that they feel that. And I bet they do, because that we know the Israeli public is bloodthirsty as fuck about this thing. A solid majority have thought all along that Israel is not using enough force. That's what the polls have said. Like big majorities of Israelis. So I'm sure the guys who are on the front, and also a lot of, and this is truly terrifying, if you guys know, if people know anything about the settlers in Israel, they constitute now 20 to 30% of the IDF. And I think there are even a bigger proportion of soldiers who are on the ground inside Gaza. I think it might even be half of them are like settlers. So these people, that's like letting the Klan run the police force, or I mean, or letting the Klan, be recruiting Klansmen into the army and then like unleashing them on some country in Africa. I mean, that's what this is. These people are like avowedly racist and avowedly genocidal. There's never been any question that the settlers collectively, politically, are genocidal. I mean, they say so. And they're outright racist. There's no doubt about it. So that's who's in Gaza doing the fighting with IDF uniforms on and all the fancy weapons and tanks and everything and drones overhead. And they're just shooting people like it's unbelievable. Just the snipers, what the snipers are alone, the number of children and women and guys holding their hands up who are getting shot by snipers that I've seen video of. I just can't.
Well, there was the march. I mean, the IDF like is on the record doing this. So this like the march in what was it, 2018, where
Great March of Return.
The Great March of Return. All the Gazans went to the border, and all these unarmed civilians were just picked off like flies by snipers. And that's officially what happened on the record. There's no spin on it at all. Right? There's no, these were Hamas terrorists trying to kill us. It was just,
that's all it ever is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It is, the whole pro-Israel side is so intellectually bankrupt. It makes the American left look like geniuses. I mean, the arguments that I hear coming from that side are just staggeringly stupid, and sort of primitive and tribalistic. There was this, what's this show? It's some podcast. It's Ask a Jew, I think it's called. And it's two women. They're two Jewish women. I think one's Israeli. She is Israeli. And they're kind of in the sort of, I don't know, libertarianish, but like soft libertarian orbit, I guess. But they've become big lately because of Israel. So they're very like super pro-Israel, but from the kind of like, they're anti-woke people, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now, so anyway, and she gave this, the Israeli one gave this soliloquy about how she said she was going on about how proud she is that she's part of a people, Israelis, who value the sanctity of human life and of individual freedom, and how we regret killing a human being is the worst sin according to us, and we value human life more than anyone else, but I also want to kill them all. Like, that's the Israeli liberal mentality. That's how they think. They just carve out Palestinians in their minds. They carve out a different moral category for them than for everybody else. They can be killed. It's okay. In fact, it's necessary. No, it's a genocidal culture now, and that's really true. I think, you know what? I think the culture of Israel, the general popular culture of Israel, is more genocidal than the government is. You actually see more like outright just calls to kill them all and just really, I'm learning more and more about the racism in Israeli society. It's really deep. It's really bad. Well, it's very similar to the Deep South and Jim Crow.
I haven't explicitly said this because I really didn't want to. It's a very hard point to make without. Okay, so the quote unquote anti-Semites of the right allege that this genocidal behavior is rooted in Jewish cultural traditions. It is rooted in beliefs of superiority that are in the Talmud. They believe that they are God's chosen people, and they believe that anybody outside of their tribe, anybody who ascribes to these beliefs, are less than and can be treated as less than themselves, that they are subhuman. I would like to see the new atheists who criticize religions and who comb through the Bible and comb through the Hadith and the Quran for the worst sounding passages, give an objective look at the Talmud, which I have never read, but give an objective look at the Talmud and see if this hypothesis has any bearing in the actual Jewish texts that are the foundation of this culture and faith.
Well, I mean, you don't need to even do that if you just know sort of, I guess, I mean, I know American Jewish culture for sure. If you've just been around a lot of Jews, or you're related to a lot of Jews like I am, or you know that's a part of it. There is a superiority. I mean, every sort of tribe has its own little superiority complex, right? Pretty much. But they differ in their aggressiveness, in the grandiosity of their claims. We're the master race, or, we make better chocolate than they do. It could be anything in between. But for Jews and American Jews, and again, I'm just speaking generally, of course, there's all sorts of exceptions, but, there is a culture, there is an American Jewish culture, and that is part of it. Absolutely. Oh yeah, we're the smartest. We're the best at making money. Damn right, we control Hollywood, and you wish you did too. Our sons are the best doctors. Israel, and then you see this in like their veneration of Israel. If they're sort of pro-Israel types, Zionist types, they'll talk about, how Israeli people are so good looking, better looking than the Arabs. I hear that a lot. I've heard that from many, many American Jews. The Palestinians are so ugly compared to us.
It's the only civilized country in the whole Middle East. Everywhere else is
barbarism. That stuff. Yeah, when the smarter Zionists get going, they go on and on and on about how the Palestinians haven't produced anything while we've built this Mecca, this beautiful civilization on the Mediterranean from nothing. And right, we are advanced, they are primitive. It's amazing. It's just straight up colonialism. It's straight up like 19th century discourse about the Indians here. It's the way that Andrew Jackson used to talk about the Indians and why we needed to kill them. There's no difference. It's right wild. Yeah. But yes, that is definitely a part of Jewish culture. And I don't know about in other countries, because there are different Jewish cultures in different countries, but definitely in the United States, that is a big part of it. Ask any American Jew, they'll tell you that it's a part of it. And yes, you see that in Israeli arrogance. That's the Israeli personality I've always chafed at. And most people would say that that's sort of characteristic of the Israeli personality. They're very, very confident / arrogant / aggressive, which is different than American Jews. American Jews are not like that. But there is that sort of feeling of superiority that they do share. And so Israeli Jews turn that into sort of this militant, aggressive, assertiveness. If you ever try to argue with an Israeli Jew, you'll find this out quite quickly. I went to graduate school with a bunch of them, so I know about them. But yeah, there is a type. So yeah, sure. Yeah, Israeli culture, and I've had a whole bunch of Jewish anti-Zionists on the show, and this is the thing all of them say is one of the things that's enraging to them is it's such a it sort of perverts many aspects of Jewish culture, or makes aspects of Jewish culture that are otherwise innocuous or benign or even good into evil, And yeah, we're really smart at convincing the goyim about what we're doing. So what Netanyahu said about the United States, I can convince them to do whatever we need. Really arrogant, incredible. But they're doing it in the service, not of selling movies like they did in Hollywood, but they're doing it now in the service of dropping bombs on children's heads. So Zionism is, as Christopher Hitchens said, a terrible idea from the beginning. We just have to figure out how to unwind the fucking thing before it kills us all.
And then the second piece of that, the first piece being potentially a belief in superiority of supremacy, even. The second piece of that is having your identity rooted in the Holocaust and being rooted in your status as a victim. Like, yeah.
The most awesome moment, I think, on Unregistered so far this year was, or in the last year, was when Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro, a few months ago, when he was on, I was telling him sort of my background and, you know, how my family, the Jews in my family were never religious, always secular Jews as far as I know. And he said, well, and his whole thing is, you know, being Jewish, it's just a religion. Like that's it. He says it's the job description. It's very simple. They lay it out right there in the Torah. You follow these rules, you're Jewish, which I think is a damn good definition of Jewish. And I said, well, he said, so why do you call yourself Jewish? Or why do you think you're Jewish? And I said, well, it's because, frankly, because all these secular Jews who never went to temple or anything, never read the Torah or anything, could care less about religion, chose to identify as being ethnically Jewish. And he sort of probed me. It's like, why, you know? And why? And then their children, like a lot of my friends, sort of chose to identify as Jewish when there was no other reason to. And I said, you know, it's because that's how Hitler would have identified us. We all know that we would have gone to the gas chamber. That Hitler would have said we were Jews and would have gone to the gas chambers. And that's why we chose to identify as, that's what makes us Jewish. I've said that myself. It's true. Like, I'm technically Jewish enough that he would have considered me easily, and my son, Jews.
Intellectual.
Right.
Also being a troublemaking intellectual.
Yeah. And he said, that is the most anti-Semitic thing I've ever heard in my life. That you're letting Adolf Hitler define who a Jew is. And I was like, oh my God, but that is all these post Holocaust Jews in the West, in the United States, like people I grew up around and my parents and all that. They got nothing to do with any of that shit. Holocaust is absolutely irrelevant to their lives, always has been, except by choice, except it's a way to identify as a victim, which, as we all know, has been super popular in recent years. And Jews were actually one of the first people to do that in this country, to choose to be victims by embracing the Holocaust identity. And this is where like Norman Finkelstein comes in, his book, The Holocaust Industry, in which Israel uses that and actually in many ways produced that feeling among a bunch of Jews. The Israel lobby pumped out all this propaganda about the Holocaust and about how, you know, Jews need to always be thinking about this. And that's why we have all these Holocaust museums everywhere. But it was always in the service of Israel. That message was always ended with, and that's why we need a Jewish state to make sure that this will never happen again. The Jews will always be able to protect themselves. It's a whole, and there's these Zionist summer camps that a lot of Jewish kids go to. It's part of this. Yes, it's an international Jewish conspiracy that is attempting to control much of the world. Yes, of course. Now it's just that it's only the Zionists, basically. Other Jews could care less or are opposed to this. As I've said, you know, of all the Jews I've known in my life, and it's a whole lot of people, I mean, I can think of like 2 or 3 who went to Israel. I mean, no one cares. Most Jews don't care unless they're asked, and then they'll say, of course, they're pro-Israel. But yeah, it's a deadly logic, the logic of Zionism, and it can only lead to what's happening right now in Rafah. Put those people pushed to the last little corner while bombs are being dropped on them. It's going to, since the beginning, they needed to expel or kill them. That was the only choice they were ever given. Zionists always made it clear that they needed that land, and never were serious about giving up any land. And we know that because, by the way, I know I can feel people in the chat, I bet, just like responding to that. Look at the settlements policy. If you doubt that, you know, people look, the Oslo peace process in the 90s. The entire time they are allowing and encouraging the building of illegal settlements in the West Bank and Gaza in the occupied territory. So they couldn't give that land back. It became basically impossible. They clearly weren't serious about ever giving that land back. So even the liberal Zionists, liberal leaders of Israel were always ultimately interested in pushing them out. And if they couldn't push them out, they'd have to kill those who remained. And Palestinians, for whatever reason, generally are a people who refuse to leave, refuse to be conquered, which wouldn't be my choice. But speaking of like similar to Aaron Bushnell, like that's not my choice. I'd be the fuck out of there. I'd have been out of there a long time ago and moved to New York City or wherever as a Palestinian. But I absolutely also defend and respect that their choice to resist, you know, and die for it if need be. I mean, I respect that choice.
Joe Biden said on Seth Meyers that line that he's a Zionist, and he's a Zionist because if Israel were not to exist, there'd be no safe place for Jews, and that the implication being that America is not safe for Jews. That
wait, who said that?
Biden on Seth Meyers.
Oh, Biden. Yeah.
But I guess to tie this back to the Flower Massacre, as it's being called, is it malice or incompetence that so many civilians keep dying in incidents like this? Where
I think it's both. I think that's what I was sort of saying before. I think it's both. I just the way that military is operating, and then putting these videos up on TikTok, celebrating bombing buildings and killing people. It's incredible. There's a whole lot of sadistic vengeance going on. Again, people need to look at what's going on inside of Israeli society. There are no liberals anymore. There's no one is sympathetic to Palestinians anymore. They are fine, basically, with killing a whole bunch of them. That's very clear. And the soldiers who are on the ground inside Gaza are the sort of tip of the spear of the right wing politically in that country. That's who's there. These settlers, largely, who are openly racist and genocidal. So you got, and then also they haven't, no one is in the IDF has fired a bullet really, except sort of as snipers, but not in this way in ground combat since 2006 or earlier. But it's been a long time. So it's a whole generation. So this whole generation of IDF soldiers has no combat experience, basically, except patrolling the West Bank. That's all they've ever done. So they don't know how to do it. And I've seen lots of military experts analyze what the IDF is doing, and they all say that it's pretty shoddy and pretty, like, it's actually scary how unprofessional they are. And because they're so full of vengeance and sadism, and they feel very entitled to that. I mean, no one in Israel is going to get mad at them. No one at home is going to get mad at them for what they're doing in Gaza. So and I've seen it. I've just seen way too many gratuitous shootings of people. No doubt. There's just no question. Like there was a woman and a kid walking across. She was holding the kid's hand, and they were walking across the street in Gaza. Sniper, boom, just takes her out. Again and again and again, you see that. So, yeah, it's both. It's malice and incompetence. And policy. I mean, also, very clearly the policy is to push them all out. That's what they're trying to do. Which is why the use of the term genocide, I'm not 100% sold on that. And I think it's a bit of it's a tricky argument to sustain, and there's no need to, because it's clearly ethnic cleansing. There's no doubt about that, which is enough, and using mass murder to achieve ethnic cleansing. So this is not like, it's not a defense of anybody. To me, it's just as bad. Doesn't really matter. But genocide, technically, I don't think they're actually trying to kill everybody in Gaza. I don't think that's the intention, but the intention is most certainly to get them all out of there. That's for sure. And also, I think we mentioned this last week, but Egypt has built a walled area in the Sinai, just outside of Gaza, that I think they say can hold 60,000 people in tents. And Egypt is denying that they're doing this, that it's for Gaza refugees, but everyone assumes that there's some deal that's been made between Israel and Egypt to push, I guess, some portion of the people who remain in Gaza into these tent camps in Egypt, in the desert. In the Sinai there, I think, is completely uninhabitable. I mean, there's nothing there. It's just dirt. It's just amazing. And everyone should go look at the video of Joe Biden eating ice cream. Do you see that with Seth Meyers?
Did he eat ice cream on the show?
No, they went out to an ice cream parlor to
Oh
get
my
an ice
God.
cream cones, because that's what men do.
A man on the street bit where he goes out and
That's what men do.
yeah,
Like, that's what you know, when you came here, that's why I was like, Mike, you want to go get some let's go get some ice cream, dude. And we went to the
yeah.
No, he's standing there and like trying to be all like charming Uncle Joe, trying to do that shtick he does, you know, just smiling, eating this big ass cone of ice cream. And some reporter like finds them and he starts asking them questions about the ceasefire. Are you gonna support a ceasefire? When are we gonna get a ceasefire, President? Mr. President? He's like licking the ice cream, he's like laughing, he's smiling. Well, I hope by the end of the weekend, but maybe Monday. I don't know. It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. Like, that man needs to go. The architect of the war on crime, the Biden crime bill, mass incarceration, the leading pro-war senator for Iraq in 2003, Joe Biden is probably, next to George Bush himself, the second most important proponent of the Iraq War, 2003. And now this. Dude, and there's many more crimes that brothers committed. It's so time to go, bro. And it's amazing, you know what the argument now is on the left, or not? Yeah, on the liberals, not left. Liberals are saying, "Oh yeah, you want to vote for Trump? You don't want to vote for Biden, huh? Trump's going to be so much worse for Palestinians and Arabs." And Palestinians are like, "Excuse us, can it get worse than this?" I have a feeling that I just have this feeling that Trump would actually cut a deal with Netanyahu too pretty soon.
Yeah. I have this horrible feeling of "I told you so" from back during 2020, like me trying to make an argument from the left to at least just not vote for Biden. At least even at the primary stage and every stage of it, that Biden was the most dangerous candidate to the world, period, because like Hillary Clinton, he's on the record with 50 years of policy that is proven to be disastrous. All he'll be remembered for is the Iraq War, mobilizing the Democratic Party to support the Iraq War, and sitting idly by while Obama turned Bush's 3 wars into 7.
Yes, his record is 100% perfect. He's been for every single bad thing since he got into office in the 70s, didn't he? Yeah. Yeah. Since
there's
I think
clips of Johnny Carson making fun of him for what was it?
Not to mention just being like a sleazy car salesman. When I was an intern on Capitol Hill, I worked on the Senate side and I saw him a lot. Just and he was just even then it was just, he seemed so greasy, like a greasy wheeler dealer kind of guy. And that was kind of his rep. Even that was in the 80s. Way back then, that's what people thought of him. It's amazing he got as far as he did. I don't know how he did it. Did you see what happened in Michigan? Speaking of Biden and all this, the Michigan primary happened.
Yeah. I don't know what the results were statewide, but in particular, Dearborn, Michigan, Biden lost to uncommitted and Dean Phillips. He only got 25% of the vote in Dearborn.
Yeah. So there was a movement, it's been going on for several weeks now, maybe even a couple months, among Michigan, mostly Arab Democrats. And for people who don't know, it's the biggest Arab population, I believe, and Muslim population in the United States is in Michigan. And Dearborn in particular is like almost entirely Arab. And there's been a movement among Michigan Democrats, and I'm talking about, these are real party people. These are not, otherwise they toe the line with the party, but they waged a campaign to get people to vote as uncommitted, I think the word is in Michigan. And uncommitted meaning calling for a ceasefire, meaning it's a protest vote against Joe Biden. that they will not vote for Joe Biden. And 100,000 people in Michigan voted uncommitted in the primary, meaning they voted in protest on this issue directly. And Michigan is a crucial swing state with a whole bunch of electoral votes in it. Mm-hmm. So, not to mention the fact that Trump is like doubling Biden in approval ratings, isn't he? Something like that.
He's leading in every swing state.
I mean,
yeah.
Where's Biden now? In the 20s or 30s? Isn't he like way down there?
I don't know in particular as far as approval, but I do know that Trump is beating him in every general election forecast poll, and pretty much
right.
Yeah.
By a lot.
Yeah.
By a lot. I mean, this is an ass whooping coming.
And Trump is the most least favorable candidate in American political history, probably. Like, he has the most built-in hatred towards him. He's supposed to be the guy that is supposed to lose every general election, be the shoe-in for the Democrats, but
for sure. Yeah, man. It sure would be nice, not to be boring about this, but it sure would be nice if MAGA would figure out the Israel thing, because they're off on this. And I think Don himself, if I sat down with him, or if Max Blumenthal sat down with him, I think he would see the light on this. We know he's persuadable on such things. And also, it's just Jared. I know it's just Jared. It's the only reason he cares about this thing. He doesn't care about Jews. But it's not it's not a MAGA issue. It's completely inconsistent with their politics. What on earth are you talking about? America first, but we support Israel? Excuse me? What is this? It's like a globalist front. I mean, it's like the tip of the spear of the globalist empire. And it's also like full of rainbow people, which you hate the most. Israel's like the gayest, queerest country on earth. Well, it's like one big San Francisco.
Trump doesn't care about the gays. He wasn't going to throw them in concentration camps like
I know, it's just like what,
but he personally
saying, like, the populist right, like what on earth are they supporting Israel for? Except it's just a means to bash Muslims with, right? Israel's just like another club to hit Muslims over the head with. Is that why? I don't get it. Like, they should not be supporting this.
I think, I'm not sure if Max Blumenthal could get it done, but I think Candace Owens could get it done. I think Tucker could get it done potentially. Just cozy up to his ego and say, what objectively have you gotten for your support of Israel? And
yeah.
Yeah.
The problem with the left on this, the whole movement, I haven't seen anyone say this. I need to start saying this publicly more often. To me, the big mistake so far is that the whole conversation only needs to be about one thing, and really should only be about one thing. You don't even have to talk about dead kids. You don't have to talk about any of that stuff. Just say to American people, do we want to support this country? Do we want to send money and give it military assistance going forward or not? Do we want Congress to vote for that appropriation or not? And do we want the executive to stop its military cooperation with Israel? Real simple. That's it. Yeah. That argument. We just need to be making that argument. We need to just go after the U.S. relationship with Israel. And instead of weeping and wailing about how evil Israel is, which is important, but like, we've got to really focus on that, because even if you're just the most hardcore pro-Palestine anti-Zionist in the world, that's all you need too, because once the U.S. stops, Israel's toast. Israel will have to radically reform, or it will be eradicated. So, I just wish the whole movement would focus on that much more. You need to start asking Americans directly, do you want to keep funding this country that does this?
Did you see Trump's, I think it was a Truth Social, I might have put it on Twitter as well, but that all foreign aid going forward is to be a loan, no more automatic money. Like, there has to be some promise that we get something in return for this.
Businessman.
Yeah.
I love it. What's the ROI on that Israel thing?
Yeah.
for
And I think
instance.
that's a step in a positive direction, just saying you don't get our support for free anymore. I think
Mhm.
that's at least a step in the right direction. That's something coherent. Yeah.
So this is something that Trump proposed?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow. About
Um,
Israel specifically?
about Israel and Ukraine specifically, it was yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Already he's like flanking the Democrats. He's more progressive than the Democrats on this.
Mhm.
Wow. Even with Jared in his ear, he would say that? He would
Yeah,
condition aid to Israel?
yeah.
Oh, wow. I missed that. That's
Mhm.
huge. That's a huge break from what Biden's been doing. There's no, it's incredible. They're just letting Israel do whatever they want. It's wild. And by the way, this is the first president who's let Israel do that.
Mhm.
Every other president has reined in Israel. Everyone, Reagan, Nixon, the Republicans, Democrats, they all pulled Israel back when they were slaughtering too many people. But Biden's the first to just let them run amok. It's wild.
Mhm.
But George Bush, W. Bush was actually pretty tough on Israel in a bunch of ways. Reagan pulled the plug on them. He told Begin he was going to stop some arms shipment, and like 20 minutes later Begin like ended a military intervention that he was doing. I mean, Biden could do that tomorrow. He could do that right now and end it. He hasn't even they haven't even pulled back or slowed down. Let's talk about Ukraine in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, that New York Times story about CIA bases being in there for 10 years, something that we always knew. Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is almost like case closed evidence of what we've been arguing all along, that this whole thing is a US creation.
Mhm.
Now, what's fascinating is that what we're talking about is a New York Times article that came out, I think, over the weekend, which is actually clearly intended to celebrate, believe it or not, US involvement in Ukraine. But they do it by pointing out or reporting that since 2014, when the Maidan Revolution or coup happened, right, replacing a government the US didn't like with a government it did like, uh, since at least then, but almost certainly before then, but they say in the article, at least since then, since 2014, the CIA of the United States of America has had, how many is it? 12? 14
12
bases? 12.
bases is
12.
are in the
12
article, yeah.
bases. CIA bases, not military bases. CIA has had 12 bases in Ukraine. And where were they? Where are they? They're still there. They've been there for 10 years. They're all along the border. Guess what? With Russia. No kidding. And the New York Times is reporting this as like a feel-good story about how the good old US was helping out plucky Ukraine in its fight against evil Russia. The CIA was so kind and generous. They established 12 bases in this country. Isn't that nice of them? So now we know the whole damn thing was manufactured by the good old Central Intelligence Agency. I mean, it's just incredible. The more I find out about what the CIA and its various affiliates have been doing, they have really shaped the world. I mean, that agency alone is primarily responsible for the Ukraine war, I would say. If you're going to point to any one group or individual, it's the CIA and the presidents, of course. But yeah, I mean, that article, that's it. We now know that this is what's been going on since the get-go. We also, of course, always knew Victoria Nuland, the phone call in 2014 during the Maidan Revolution, basically directing things and like choosing people to be in the government when the coup was over. Like, we know. Now we really know. But it's sort of funny that they're telling on themselves. And here's an interesting thing. Douglas McGregor said he said this, I think, just today, that, and it makes sense to me, that the only reason that the CIA would leak this, because that's what it is. The CIA chose to give this to the New York Times, right? Gave them the story. That's how they found out about it. Is that they're preparing to give up. McGregor thinks that this story in the New York Times is just them signaling, the CIA and the US government signaling that they're preparing to abandon Ukraine, the project.
Like, it's history now, so here it is for the record.
Yeah, that's what he thinks. I think it's quite plausible. Yeah, it is such a catastrophe. Then again, we're just sending them, getting ready to send them another 60 billion. So that could be from within the CIA. So in other words, the CIA, Congress is running along, right? Congress has got this full head of steam, driven by all sorts of constituents. They got to be pro-Ukraine. So they're passing these spending bills to send more money to Ukraine. Meanwhile, the CIA is actually running the shit. And I think his theory is that they are sending a signal to the rest of the establishment. And no, we need to stop this now. Time to retreat. Call it a day with Ukraine. Take the L. Move on.
Interesting. Glenn Greenwald's take, I might be getting this wrong, so maybe I shouldn't say that, but I thought I heard him say that, well, the broader implications, I don't know, but that this isn't like a big bombshell release where we get like, oh, fine, we get to say, I told you so. This is them valorizing the CIA and celebrating it and shoving it in our faces.
Right.
And so could that be potentially to rally public support for the CIA as the great freedom fighters against Putin as Hitler?
Oh, yeah. It was a total puff piece. It was like a PR piece for the CIA.
Yeah.
It was as I said, it was like the New York Times doing like a hero profile of the CIA. Yeah, because the CIA is about to, win the election again. And so we got to make sure they have their support.
I don't trust, like, McGregor's theory is interesting, but I don't trust America's lawmakers to pick up on that subtle nuance of that messaging, that the CIA is releasing this and that actually it means that we're done here. That's a very subtle message to pick up on, and I see it more likely that our lawmakers are going to open the New York Times and say, wow, those great agents of ours that we've given all that money to are fighting Hitler in Russia, so let's give them more money.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, who knows, right? The CIA is obviously acts as a quite independent force.
Yeah.
It often does its own thing, very often against Congress, without Congress even knowing about it.
Yeah. No.
So again, I could see them just sort of being at odds on this one, or the CIA being kind of in front of Congress. And this sort of might even sabotage continuing the war effort. I don't know. But anyway, the main point, the most important point, is not what it says about the future, but what it says about the past.
Yeah.
Which again, as I said, and then again, we have, and I was going to say, in addition to that, we have the pre-2014 whole history, which we have a course on it at Unregistered Academy, by the way, of the very, very long relationship between the CIA and Ukrainian nationalists, which is unbroken, that chain from World War II all the way through the Cold War, all the way through 2014 and to the present. The CIA has been there operating, building this movement, building this group of people, this cadre that eventually took over the government in Ukraine and pushed that country into war against Russia. It's a CIA story since 1945. And now we have every piece of that puzzle. We see the whole thing, the whole lineage.
But
and then telling on themselves.
If the CIA wasn't there, Putin would have installed a puppet in Ukraine. So
no doubt. No doubt. Yeah. It's wild to me when I hear very smart people who I know talk about Putin, and it's just it's just nothing but like, oh, he's just evil. Of course, he killed Navalny. Oh, by the way, it's now a consensus that Navalny died of a blood clot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they talk about. I mean, and like they assume that he wants to conquer all of Europe.
Well,
Like what? He would. It's the last thing he wants. That would
yeah.
destroy his country overnight if he tried to do that.
The
They
liberal
couldn't
take on
sustain it.
Navalny. Yeah, the liberal take on
Yeah.
Navalny was, of course, obviously Putin did it. Nobody else would have done it.
Of
Like, it's
course,
a given Putin did it. And
right,
then this proves how crazy Putin is, because only a crazy person would kill Navalny like this.
right.
Like,
He's
it
already in
proves he's a
prison.
madman.
Only a maniac would kill a guy who's already in prison. What kind of
Yeah.
a sadist monster would do that? Putin would. Right. No, it's just so dumb. Like
Yeah.
it's just so dumb. You really want to think it. I mean, even grant that he's like our enemy. Let's say that. Like you want to think of your enemies that in such a stupid way.
Mhm.
I mean, even if you were actually Hitler, don't you want to like actually analyze what the dude thinks? And might there be some nuance in his think somewhere? Like
Yeah.
he's just a monster. He's not even a human being. Okay.
And then this is something Michael Tracy has kind of been pointing out. It's a little bit relevant in what you were saying about in your recent interview you just put out with Glenn Deason, and the one you did a
Yeah.
year ago about this being motivated by anti-Russian racism.
Yes.
Putin in his
Russophobia.
annual address accused the United States of anti-Russian racism and having broader racist problems built into its culture. But you got this from the Tucker interview that Putin, as a disappointment to the right, isn't this esoteric right winger who reads Evola or whatever weird philosopher you want to think of.
Mhm.
Putin's actually just a liberal like everyone else, and that all of his arguments, if you really listen to them, are pretty liberal, rules-based order, objective arguments to be made. Like NATO violated its contract. NATO did something that they said they wouldn't do. They violated the rules-based order they're supposed to uphold. I wanted to join NATO. They wouldn't let me. Like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Putin. Okay, so yes, he has some liberal assumptions. Putin does, but he's not a liberal internationalist. That's how he's different than our liberals. Our liberals want everyone to want to make everyone liberal. Putin doesn't want to make other people liberal. He just wants
Yeah.
to have his own sphere of influence. He wants to make Russia into a major power. He wants Russia to be respected, and he wants to trade with other countries and be left alone.
Mhm.
And I'd like to support him in that. But he pays me to say that. So anyway, we got to go.
Yeah.
But we're going to a party that everyone can join us at right now. We have a party. Yeah. Right after Unreported. It's called Unregistered Live. And if you want to join us, go to patreon.com/unregistered, become a patron at any level, and click on the URL that's there on our Patreon. And we will be in a Zoom meeting with you. You can be completely anonymous. Don't have to show your face. You can just watch, hang out, listen if you want. We don't have to know you're even there. But yeah, become a patron and join us at Unregistered Live every Thursday after Unreported. Michael, did we do it? We out of here?
We're out of here. I have a harebrained, half-formed opinion that isn't even mine about Mitch McConnell stepping down.
I forgot. Poor
Yeah.
Mitch. Yeah. He's gone.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that it has something to do with the Ukraine aid, that he mobilized Republican support for Ukraine aid in the Senate, knowing that it would fail in the House. And this is like kind of the last thing he did. And that this signals some seismic shift in the GOP, that the establishment is jumping ship at this age. And maybe the conspiracy theorists are saying that this signals that the establishment has given up hope on the Republican Party, and that it might become a total populist party, which means that it has the potential of being outlawed like populist parties in other countries are, and that the full democratic criminalization of its political opponents might be further in effect here. That's the harebrained conspiracy theory. But
after the Civil War, the federal government passed the Ku Klux Klan Act, which made illegal membership in the Ku Klux Klan. And they sent federal agents and army troops all across the South and rounded up every Klansman and put them all in prison.
Not only every Klansman, but the Ku Klux Klan was and is, and to some extent nowadays, a secret society. So who can you accuse of being in a secret society but all of your political opponents? Like, you are meeting behind closed doors with these people, so that means you're a member of this secret society. And of course, you're not telling us you are because it's a secret. Like,
so, but you're foreseeing a MAGA act.
A MAGA act, potentially.
That's where you're saying that's the direction it's going in anyway.
That's the direction it's going in, at least with Trump.
It's always been going there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always been in that direction. I mean, it's not been close to getting there, but it's all they've been trying to outlaw MAGA for years, of course. Yeah.
There's that book. Right. There's that book on MSNBC that's getting promoted, White Rural Rage, I think it's called. Basically demonizing the interests of white rural voters as something pathologized. Yeah.
They're all racist, and they always have been, and that's all that matters, and that's all you need to know about anything, is that white people in middle America are racist. I mean, God, I can't believe we're going back to that. That's all we talked about for years, and we had a little brief break there, but going back to that. All right. Stay strong, middle America, white man. I don't think you're like that. I mean, well, okay, you kind of are, but anyway, all right, we got to go.
Yep.
Okay, peace.
Peace. See ya.